Hey, what's up, everybody? We are talking about the brain today. This is the brain part two. And we're going to do two parts of the brain today, the brain stem, then the cerebellum. And we'll also hit a few cranial nerves also. So, the brain stem, which we see outlined in red here, is just anterior to the cerebellum. It is inferior to the diencephalon, and it's got three parts to it. It has a midbrain, a pons, and a medulla oblongata. So this is the midbrain right here. So just inferior to the diencephalon. Here's the diencephalon up here. Underneath it is the midbrain. It is involved in vision, hearing, motor control, and a whole lot more. Let's examine some things within that midbrain. So there is a passageway running through it. That passageway running through it is called the cerebral aqueduct. It is going to connect this ventricle right here, which is the third ventricle. So our third ventricle is this concavity right here. And our fourth ventricle is this space down here. And it is these two ventricles are connected by the cerebral aqueduct. So CSF is going to flow from the third ventricle down into the fourth. Okay, with that, let's notice there is a portion of the midbrain posterior to the cerebral aqueduct. So this guy right here, I got the green dashed line on it. Looks kind of like a backwards letter B here. And it has four bulging structures. I see one here and one here. That gives me two. And of course, this is a, mid-sagittal section. So I got two on the left here. I have two bulging structures on the right as well, giving me a total of four. Now, these four bulging structures are collectively known as the corpora quadrigemina. Corpora means bodies, quad means four, and gemina means they look alike. So these are the four look-alike bodies here. The top two, so the top one in the picture here, and the other partner on the other side, are called the superior colliculi. A colliculus is a little hill, and the bottom one we see here and its partner on the other side would be the inferior colliculi. So here I got my arrow on a superior colliculus. There would be another one, of course. The superior colliculi are involved in visual reflexes, coordination of head and eye movements, eye and hand movement, and a few other things. The inferior colliculus is involved in auditory reflexes, such as the startle reflex, where if there's a loud noise and your head and your body turns toward it, that's your inferior colliculus in action. So I got my inferior colliculus, my superior colliculus. The four colliculi together are the corpora quadrigemina, which is in the back of the cerebral aqueduct. And I forgot to mention the back of the cerebral aqueduct is known as the tectum. So this whole region back here is the tectum. Then the bulges are the corpora, and the top bulge, superior colliculus, bottom bulge, inferior colliculus. And that takes us through the midbrain, but there's a neighbor we got to be aware of. So here's the superior colliculus right here. Let's put an arrow on the superior colliculus right there. Just above the superior colliculus with the 23 on it here, this is the pineal gland. The pineal gland makes a hormone called melatonin, which is very much involved in sleep-wake cycles. So we got our midbrain done, and we got a neighbor done. Let's do another neighbor now. In the anterior midbrain, we see a nerve coming out of it. This nerve right here is called the oculomotor nerve. Of course, again, we got half a brainstem here, so there'll be two of these guys. This is the oculomotor nerve. Oculo, eye, motor, movement. So this nerve is going to control most of the muscles involved in eye movement, as well as those muscles involved in dilating and constricting the pupil. So this is a nerve emanating from the brain. As such, it is known as a cranial nerve. There are 12 pairs of cranial nerves, and each of them gets a name like oculomotor nerve, but also a numerical designation. This is cranial nerve number 3. Okay, good. Now let's move down. Inferior to the midbrain, so here's the midbrain. Inferior to the midbrain is the pons. Notice the way it bulges anteriorly here. A lot of white matter in the pons connecting superior and inferior tracts. There's gray matter in here as well. Nuclei involved in chewing, swallowing, breathing, and more. I mean, that's pretty much it for the pons. Not too awesome. Let's go down. We got the medulla oblongata, the inferior-most part of the brainstem. It's going to have motor tracts running down ventrally, sensory tracts running up dorsally, and it also has nuclei involved in important things like heart rate, blood pressure, breathing, vomiting, sneezing, and even more. Now here is the cerebellum. Cerebellum literally means little brain. Cerebellum is posterior to the brainstem, inferior to that occipital lobe of the cerebrum. There are 2 cerebellar hemispheres. We're looking at one of them right here. They're involved in a whole variety of functions, and one of the main ones is coordinating motor activity. Now, while the cerebrum had those big, beautiful ridges known as gyri, my cerebellum just has smaller folds. Those are known as folia. Now, what we also notice in this section is the intricate white matter of the cerebellum called the arbor vitae. Someone thought it resembled a certain type of tree of the same name, and that arbor means tree, vitae means of life. So there's actually a tree with the same name, and somebody thought it looked like the tree, and you can kind of see it, especially like if that's the trunk, and then there's all the branches. Anyhow, that's the white matter of the cerebellum, which is going to, allow communication to come in and out. Now, in between the brainstem and the cerebellum, we got the 4th ventricle, this space right here. Remember, we talked about it a little bit ago because it's connected to the 3rd ventricle up here by means of the cerebral aqueduct. Now, CSF in here can flow inferiorly into the central canal of the spinal cord, as well as exit this ventricle to get into that subarachnoid space that we mentioned at the beginning of the previous video. Okay, check out another space. This is the transverse fissure between the cerebellum and the occipital lobe of the cerebrum. Good to know. And now what I've done here is I've smushed my 2 cerebellar hemispheres together, and in doing so, I can see this chunk of tissue right here where they join. This is called the vermis. The word vermis means worm, so someone thought this looked like a worm. And now we're going to do some other cranial nerve related things. My first pair of cranial nerves, cranial nerve pair number 1 are these guys known as the olfactory nerves. And while I don't see the olfactory nerves here, I do see their destination. The olfactory nerves come up from the nasal cavity, and the olfactory nerves are ending right here. These 2 tips that I just circled here are called the olfactory bulbs. So the tips of these, so you see this white structure right here, the tip of it is the olfactory bulb. That's where cranial nerve number 1 on each side is going to come in and synapse. I don't see cranial nerve number 1, but I know it does that. Okay. What I do see, though, is this olfactory tract. The olfactory tract is the set of axons traveling from the bulb onward towards the cerebrum, towards that medial temporal lobe, where that information about the smells we're smelling can be sorted, processed, and interpreted. Now I also see cranial nerve number 2. This is an optic nerve. On both sides I see the optic nerve. Of course they've been cut. They would be coming from the retina of the eye. So I see my 2 optic nerves here. And then I want you to notice how the optic nerves are part of an X. You see how there's like an X going on here? And the optic nerves are the upper part of the X that I'm kind of coloring in right now. So this X, the middle of it right there, the middle of that X is called the optic chiasm. That is where some axons are going to switch over to the other side. So some axons in this left optic nerve switch sides. Some axons in this right optic nerve switch sides as well. And that switching happens right there at the optic chiasm. Okay. Coming out of the optic chiasm are the legs of that X. So this is an optic tract here. Optic tract, optic tract. Optic tracts are each taking information from both eyes onward to the thalamus, where that information can start to be filtered, processed, and sorted. So optic nerve, optic tract, optic chiasm, olfactory tract, olfactory bulb. We also see our midbrain right here with its oculomotor nerve. We see our mammillary bodies from last time. We see the pons, the medulla oblongata as well. Okay, good. There's an oculomotor nerve. We met him already. We saw him in this mid-sag view. Now we see him right there as well. I kind of like the mid-sagittal view better. Easier to see. I see a lot of other cranial nerves here. You do not have to recognize all these cranial nerves. In fact, we're only going to recognize one more. You do have to know the names of them, though, and their basic jobs. Names, numbers, and basic jobs. And that's all in your lab manual for you, so I'm not going to do it in the video here. So the other cranial nerve we got to know is this guy coming off the pons, and this guy coming off the pons. Big guy right there is cranial nerve number 5. He's called the trigeminal nerve. That's because he quickly splits into 3 different branches. He's going to carry sensory information from your face, as well as he's going to send motor commands to your chewing muscles. So that's the trigeminal nerve. All right. My last slide, just a bunch of stuff for you to label here. Give it a try. See if you can find these 11 things on this view of the brain model here. So you got the brain stem right here. So brain stems right here. That's not giving away too much, hopefully. See if you can find all the stuff on it. And I will see you next time. Look, 14 minutes. Love a short video. That's awesome. See you next time. Bye.